How every morning starts. Cup of coffee. And away we go. Hope you enjoy the video. Okay, everybody. Today is, what day is today? April 28th, which means I have, 33 more days? So today, I'm gonna start finishing up the engine build. You'll have to excuse the camera. It's the only one I've got. It's a GoPro 9. It doesn't zoom in, all that good stuff. I have time warp. I can do a burst of stills, and I can do it like this. Well, this is basically what you get. So, here's what's gonna happen. We are going to start assembling the Dart guide plates, the Scorpion roller rockers, and of course the push rods to go with. So I'll show you how I'm going to do this, and then, pretty cool, huh? And then we're going to just go at it, and I'll time warp you through it because you don't want to see me work on it for an hour and a half doing the exact same thing. So I'll grab a rocker here quick, and I'll show you what needs to happen. So we take one of these beautiful pieces of jewelry, we set it on here like this, we set the rocker in the push rod and also on the valve, and then we're going to center up this guide plate so that, let me get you right up there close. What we want is, we want that rocker arm dead center in the center of the valve, like that. Then we set the guide plate so that the push rod has 5 to 6 thousandths of clearance on each, so it's a little bit wobbly. So that's what we want right there in the center. We'll snug it down a little, remove the rocker, check the push rod clearance, and then torque these down to torque spec. So I'm going to do that 16 times. And after 16 times, then we're going to go ahead and install all of the rockers. Once the rockers are all installed, we're going to install our girdles, and they just keep it from flexing under heavy load. And from there, I will pick it up, I will hang it in the air, put the flywheel on, do the clutch, then I'll measure my distance from my bell housing surface here to the edge of the pressure plate, and then the same on the transmission from the throwout bearing out to this edge. And we'll set our throwout bearing in place so it has the proper clearance. And then, if everything goes accordingly today, we may actually get the engine hanging in the car so that I can start putting the motor mounts together. I really need to have this motor in, bolted up, and ready to go by the 1st of May. If I can do that, that gives me about 30 days to do the whole rest of the car. So I don't know how much is going to get done there. We may dynamat the whole floor, throw some carpet at it, and just run it with dynamat. I might get more done. We'll just have to see. But I got to make it run and have air conditioning and have the windows go up and down. That's the plan at this point. Enjoy the video. We'll keep on plugging away. I'll zoom you up here in a minute and you can see some of the process. Okay, we're going to start with the first one. But first, I should probably do this just because I can. Been years ago, but long time ago, I worked for Jack Lee Chrysler Plymouth in West Wego, Louisiana, which is just on the other side of the Greater New Orleans Bridge from New Orleans. I like that piece of hair. I had a Challenger with a 360 in it. Put a purple shaft in it and a bunch of the spiffy Chrysler parts that I could afford while I was there. And had it in the shop because I wasn't sure. Oh, I was putting the camshaft in it. And as I'm putting the camshaft in, the weekend came, had to go home. I'm back in the following Monday. Car's outside, we had pushed it outside. And I went in, put the rest of it back together, and started it up. And one of the guys that didn't like me very much had dropped a bolt down the intake manifold. Now, I know that somebody dropped the bolt because it wasn't a bolt that went to the car. So it had to come from somewhere else. That looks pretty good. I can't really see. Let's just check. That's a tight 5. Let's check it at 4. They say a minimum of 5 thousandths clearance. But it also depends on where it stands. So if it's sitting up there like that, which it is, there's 4. So anyway, that fine bolt that now was in my pretty little Challenger's intake manifold went into a cylinder. And because it went in the cylinder, it took out the motor. So ever since then, I'm really careful. I actually take a shop vac and I'll vacuum out the holes real quick before I put an intake manifold on. It only takes a second, but if a washer or something falls in there, or you can take a magnet, just a good eyeball, there's easy ways to find stuff in there, but if you don't, catastrophic failure can happen in a heartbeat. So, what I've done so far, obviously, I just snugged these up just a little bit. And we will check and recheck and check again. And then I'll torque them. At the recommended 60 foot-pounds, which comes from ARP in aluminum heads. Now I have gone ahead and put never-sees on every one of these bolts. It's just tight. So the question is, I'm going to do a couple more just for grins. I've got side-to-side clearance. I can feel them click. But you never know. So I am going to rotate over to the other side because I do know that that one is all the way down. So we will move lights. Ooh, look at that. It's almost like professional there. Yeah, let's not push our luck. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put this on here. What is that? That is some surface rust, ladies and gentlemen. On brand new parts. You just can't win. And there we go. So there's one. And there's two. I'll go to the other side. I will check to confirm. And we're about in the center, which is right about there. Give her a little wiggle. Pull it off. And one of the tricks to this, and it's kind of a pain in the ass, is you gotta almost hold the guide plate. I think I already did this one. I may have already done this one in testing. I believe that I did. We'll just pop this one back on. Another silly thing that people don't always do is right there, this is the round side and this is the flat side. Your nut retainer, whatever you're going to use, goes on the flat side, so be sure that flat side is up. I know it's silly, but you know, some people don't know it and they can run into serious problems. It appears like I've got my 4. Let's confirm that the push rods are in. Oop. Okay, they weren't. Nice. We got slop. Okay, there's one. Now this is a LS firing order, so it doesn't go 18436572. I'm going to have to look real quick to find out what the firing order is, because I will go to the next cylinder and go ahead and do that one. Proof I can't read. 1872653. It's hard to break old habits. I went right back into the good old Gen 1 firing order, which is 18436572. So the only ones that are in the same place are 1 and 8, which moves it all the way around. So if you ever want to mess somebody up, put this camshaft in, wire it the other way, and see how long it takes them to figure out that it's totally different. Okay, I moved on to 8, which is next in the firing order. I went ahead and set it up. I'll just snug it down real quick with a box wrench. I already tightened the other side a little bit. I will go ahead with my trusty torque wrench. Torque goes to 60 foot-pounds. Then I will recheck. I'll check to make sure I'm in the center. I am. I will check with my feeler gaugey. These feeler gauges are just about too fat to get in the hole. But it does go. And it does go. So they really should be about half that width. So that way they would get in between a little better. But I can get it in there and I can feel it. And also, when I move it side to side, I do get a little bit of a click in there. So I know that's not the perfect way to do it. But it's the way I've got to do it. Because if I cut a feeler gauge in half, you'll get that little lip on the end. And that won't work either. Okay, so I'm just going to move along, get all these done, and away we'll go. Okay guys, listen up. this is rather important. When you see these guys building these magic motors in these shops, and you see a clean room, which is really nice to have, but you also see that motor is just immaculate, super, super clean. What you don't see is behind the scenes. Building a motor is a messy job. There's no way around it. You've got motor oil and assembly lube and all sorts of goop that you use everywhere. You've got a little bit of oil or grease on the seals for the front and the rear. You've got gasket sealer. I mean, you name it, you got some. You got a little bit of blood where you cut your finger on a sharp edge. It ain't all that it's hyped up to be in all these beautiful motors. Somewhere behind the scenes, some guy's got his hands in a bucket of oil pulling out lifters. And even if they're rollers, he's got assembly lube all the way up to his elbows. There's all sorts of stuff going on there. So when you see these beautiful engines all together in the perfect shiny valve covers and all, know that after they were done assembling, they had a bunch of cleaning and detailing to do to make it look that way. Sure, once the long block is done, after this is done and I put the valve covers on, you won't see the goopy hands and the cuts on my fingers and all. But just know that somebody in the background was doing this stuff and not exactly staying sanitary. Now, I will say this, you want clean oil, obviously. You want clean hands, you want clean assembly places, but for the normal street guy, street motor, just know you're gonna get messy. That's all there is to it. It's gonna happen. Now I'm going ahead and putting all of the stud girdle rocker retainers on, and then I'm going to put the stud girdle itself on and just snug it just a little bit. By doing that, I take out the deflection that's already there. When you adjust the valves and you put them under this excessive spring pressure on these roller cams, even on a regular cam, you take the chance of it flexing the stud a little bit before you adjust the valve. As you adjust it, it may flex a little bit more so that once it's off of load, if you will, it's actually a little too loose. So you need to do that if you're using them. If you aren't using them and you're only going to 5,500 or 6,000 RPM, don't worry about it. If you're going to 6,500 RPM for just your little jaunt real quick, I wouldn't be too awful concerned. But if you're planning on romping on it a lot, having a lot of fun with it, you know what? These are cheap security that you don't have valve train flex, which can lead to nastiness in the long run. So I got all my rocker guide plates done. I did have one little problem with clearance of the push rod on one hole interfering with the machining. I just gave that a quick clean. What I did was I covered everything with a rag, turned the shop vac on, and just took a file, and I literally had to hit it for just 2 little burrs. Vacuumed them out, good to go. So we'll continue on with this. I'm gonna have to clean my hands off just so that I can turn the camera off. So you're stuck with me for another minute or two, because I might as well get these all done. Yeah, you just gotta be smart on what you're working with. There we go. You can see the oil dropping off my hands. I prefer to go ahead and put these in a little bit of oil as well. I'm just using Rotella 1540, which is thick enough that until the motor runs, it'll kind of stay there. It's got plenty of zinc in it, even though we aren't using a flat tappet cam. It's not a bad idea. It doesn't hurt anything. And it's just great for assembling. I obviously used assembly lube doing the bottom and then the camshaft. But for this stuff, I just use regular oil. And I just threw them in an old pub mix bucket with, I don't know, 3-4 ounces of oil. Shook it like I was making popcorn, which kind of splashed it everywhere. And that's what we do. All right, so now I'm gonna clean my hands off real quick. I'm going to turn you guys off, get ready for the next step, which will be, I'm just going to run these down finger tight, although some of them with my slimy fingers aren't just flying down the threads. And then I'll kick the camera back on so you can see how to install the stud girdles, and we'll start adjusting valves. Okay, so what I've done is I've just gone ahead and brought them down to the rocker. I'm going to rotate the motor around. Each one's going to go down. When I'm on the compression stroke, I'm going to go ahead and just bring them down so they're about even. As you can see, a few of them are up taller than the rest. So I'll just bring those down close, and then I'll go through the adjustment procedure after I put the girdles on, so stand by. Well, once again, we run into an issue. Everybody liked these valve covers. I'm not sure they're going to clear these rockers. It is so close that it may make a noise, and there's really no way to fix it. So we'll put them on it, and if we fire it up and it goes, well, then we're going to come up with a different plan. So I do have another set that came off of my 357, which ain't quite as pretty. Don't worry, the inside's clean. Outside might be a little dirty, dusty. But these do seem to fit a little better. I honestly don't know. These 165s are, you can see just the corners maybe interfering right at the top of the surface for the valve cover. I don't know where you can see this. It's just this little bit of angle right here. If it isn't, I mean, you can see it's really, really close. I don't know if it'll clear or not. We will see. But there's how she looks with them all on there. Pretty cool stuff. I'll go ahead and you can watch 1,000 videos on how to adjust valves. I do it my way. I don't do it a whole turn. I don't do it a half turn. It's depending on what I'm doing. Some of them I do 3/4. It's up to you. If they're going to be a little noisy if you do 1/4, I don't think that's the best way to go. I think between 1/2 and 3/4. But I'm no engineer. I've just built a few engines that seem to last. So. And I've built them in conditions like this many times, which is, a barn. So just know that I'm not your everyday engine builder, but my stuff seems to be okay. I'm not going to call it awesome. I'm not going to call it perfect. I'm just going to call it okay. So if you're an okay kind of guy, and that's what you want to build, don't be afraid to build it in a garage. It's okay. You can make it live. Just be careful. Keep your parts clean. Keep your shop as clean as you can. If there's dirt on the floor, there's nothing you can do about that. Just don't do it on a windy day. You'll be fine. Change the oil as soon as you start it up. Run it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Drop the oil out of it. See what happens. You can spend a lot of money on getting somebody else to put your entire engine together, and yet you'll never know how one goes together. Well, what's the point of that? Have some fun with it. Build a cheap one first. Buy an old 350, put a set of rings and bearings in it. Learn how to lap the valves with a drill and some lapping compound. Just get her cleaned up and see if you can make it run. Throw it in the car, fire it up. If it runs good, surprise, you've just built your first motor. You don't need to have mics and all that stuff. Buy yourself some plastic gauge, check a couple bearings, make sure the crank isn't all scored up and the cylinders aren't junk. Try one. There's 1,000 books out there on how to do it. Watch YouTube videos. It's really, really a good feeling when you put one together for the first time and you start it up and it runs and it doesn't smoke and it doesn't knock. What are you going to be out? $300 for parts? Man, that's a good gamble, because then you can sell it as a good running motor. I wouldn't sell it as rebuilt, but put in the ad that you put new rings and bearings in it, and it holds 40 pounds of oil pressure, and some guy needs it for his daily driver. You'll get out of it scot-free without a dime in it, and you will have learned something. It's worth the gamble. Try it sometime.